All right, so today we're talking about bulb basics. Bulbs are one of the easiest and rewarding blooming plants. A lot of them are blooming plants for the garden or landscape. So they're very, very easy to do. They're very economical, and that's kind of what I love about them, is you get a lot of bang for your buck. And a lot of them are perennial. So we're going to talk about perennial versus annual, or perennial versus whether you got to dig them up and store them and then replant them again. So, but there's a lot of value in bulbs, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. I also think a lot of people don't realize the time frame. We all see daffodils and tulips blooming in the spring, and we say, oh, I want to plant those. And a lot of people come into the garden center and say, I want to get some daffodils or tulips. Bulbs, and it's, well, you missed it. It's in the fall, so we've got to plant those now in the fall. We're going to talk about that at length, about all the specific times to plant things. And I'm going to specifically talk about fall bulbs today because it's fall here in Virginia, and it's a great time to plant daffodils, tulips, alliums, muscari. There's a lot. I'm going to show you a bunch of them. We've got packages here, and I'll show you some, and I'll even open up some to show you what the bulbs look like and how to plant them, which weighs right up. And so we'll talk about that at length as well. There's a wide variety of bulbs to choose from. So when we talk about fall bulbs versus spring bulbs, fall bulbs are going to be like your daffodils, your tulips, alliums, as well as some vegetables. We'll talk about some vegetables too. Garlic and onions you can plant right now. They will overwinter, and then you'll harvest those in the spring, so we'll talk about that a little bit. Spring bulbs, there's a whole other crop of bulbs in the spring, and spring bulbs you plant in the spring, and they'll bloom in the summer. Now there you get a little bit issues of whether they're perennial or not, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We got dahlias and cannas and gladiolus and elephant ears and peonies, caladiums, lilies, as well as more vegetables again, potatoes, onions, garlic, asparagus, rhubarb. So we've got a lot of choices in the spring as well. So just always kind of keep that in mind you're starting almost like seeds. It's almost just like seed planting. You're starting earlier than you typically would go and find that actual plant growing in the garden center. But it's going to be valuable. It's going to be very, very valuable for you to do that. Because of bulbs, because bulbs are just an amazing little thing in itself, very similar to a seed, except they're much larger. And this little bulb, or big bulb sometimes, has everything that plant needs to survive. So they're very, very easy to grow. Basically, what activates them to start thinking about growing is temperature and soil and moisture. And so when they're sitting in a bag, I'll just hold up a bag here, and you see all these bulbs in this bag. These are just kind of dormant seeds, basically. And what we're going to do is when we plant these in the ground, we're going to water them in. Now, here in the fall, when we water them in, they're going to get watered in. They're going to start to realize that they're in the ground, but then they're going to go through a cool season and then bloom in the spring. And during that whole time frame, they're living organisms. All seeds and plants are, and bulbs are. And then they're going to come up in the spring and bloom, and then you can continue the process year after year. And we're going to get into more specifics about that here in a little bit. But they're extremely valuable because of that. They don't require a lot of care or maintenance. They don't have a lot of issues. We're going to talk about a couple of those. But it's a very, very simple plant to grow. It's all about timing with these, just like seeds. It's all about timing and making sure that we're on schedule. So it can really be as simple as, my favorite kind of term is dig, drop, done. You literally can dig a hole, drop them in, and fill it back in, and you're done. So it can be a very, very simple process, and that's why we're going to talk about them, because they're so much fun and so easy to do. So today, like I mentioned, we're going to mainly talk about fall bulbs. With anything in the garden or landscape, a little bit of planning goes a long way. So whenever I talk about landscape design last week, or even in the past when I was talking about the fall vegetable garden or the spring vegetable garden or any type of project that we're going to do in the landscape, just spend a little bit of time on planning. It will go a long way. It'll make you more successful. It'll help us. So when you come into the garden center to ask questions, with a little bit of planning, you'll have a little bit of knowledge and be able to ask questions for us, and we'll be able to ask you questions and get some answers too. And then that way we can get the correct things to make you very, very successful. So just a little bit of planning goes a long way. So let's talk about sun and shade with bulbs. There are specific plants that grow in the shade and some that grow in the sun. But there are a lot of bulbs that really don't really care too much. And so you get a lot of ability to grow. And so I always go to daffodils because they're one of the easiest bulbs to grow. So if you're a beginner at bulb growing, starting with bulbs for the first time, daffodils are super, super simple. And I would definitely recommend them. And we're going to talk about those at length here in a little bit. But daffodils, I've seen growing in full shade to full sun. Now, obviously, they're going to reproduce, they're going to grow more, and they're going to get a little bit bigger and have that bigger impact in the sun because that's where they prefer to be. But in shade, they'll do just as well. And they do perfectly fine. I mean, you see them a lot in naturalized settings in woodland areas. So completely easy to grow in a little bit of different conditions. Now, there are some specifics. I look at like cannas, for instance. Cannas are a bulb. You plant those in the spring, and they definitely need full sun. They like a lot of sun. That's where you're going to get the best bloom, and that's where you're not going to run into issues of powdery mildew or mold or any kind of disease infecting the plant. So with anything, the great thing about bulbs is the package. The package will tell you everything. So here I've got a package of Muscari. It'll tell you everything right on the package. Long-lasting blooms mid-spring. The height is 6 to 8 inches. On the back, it'll tell you full sun to partial shade. It'll tell you the planting depth and everything that you need to know. So this package right here will give you everything that you really, really need to know. Now, there might be some other questions that you might ask, like, is it a perennial? Will it come back each year? And sometimes that's not listed on the label, and you might just have to ask us those kinds of questions. And we're going to talk about a little bit of that today. So whenever I say the planting part, think about, is it sun or shade? Is that going to be an issue? If we've got shade, if we've got sun, know that when you come in to pick out your bulbs. And we'll talk about that as I go through the fall bulb selection that I've got surrounding me. We'll talk about if they're full sun or full shade or partial shade and what that means. And so also look at your bloom times. So right now we're going to be talking about fall bulbs that bloom in the spring, but there's seasons, or there's bloom times within each season. So in the spring you'll plant ones that bloom in the summer. Now we're going to plant the fall blooms, or the fall bulbs that bloom in the spring. But in the spring you've got early, mid, and late season bloomers. And again, that's information that you're going to get right on the package, so you can plan that. Maybe you want to do a mixed flower bed with bulbs that you get an early, mid, and late season bloom time with your bulbs. So that's something that you might want to consider planning for. Also look at your heights. A lot of bulbs get different heights. When we talk about tulips, we've got a wide range of heights. We got some that get 6 inches tall to some that get 2 feet tall. So think about the height of the plant and how you're going to stagger those and arrange those in your landscape garden bed. Or wherever you might be using them. We're going to talk about where all the different options you can use them. So there's lots and lots of different heights. There's lots of different bloom times. Think about those when you're planting. Planting depth, you don't need to do a lot of planting there, but just know that when you go to plant them, that you're going to have to dig anywhere from an inch or two down to 6 to 8 inches, depending on the type of bulb and where you want to get those down into that correct depth. And then, of course, as I mentioned, is it a perennial or not? Is it going to come back? Is it something that you want to just plant? And then if it goes away like an annual typically does, then that's okay with you? Or is it something that you're going to want to dig up and dry out and then replant again in the spring? And we'll talk about that specifically when we get to the spring bulbs. I'm not going to concern too much about that today, but really everything that we're talking about today are perennial. Why are fall bulbs perennial? Well, because they have to make it through our winter. So if we're planting them in the fall for spring blooms, then they've got to survive all winter long. And so all of these bulbs we're going to talk about, we're planting now. So we know that they're going to come back in the spring, and then they're going to go all the way into their dormancy period, usually in late summer, mid to late summer. And then they're going to go through that cooling period again of winter and come back in the spring, and they're super, super easy. And that's why I love fall bulbs. It's one of the easiest ones to start with, and there's a pretty good selection of them too. And it's a sign of spring, which is what I love. So it just kind of, daffodils that bloom early. I love daffodils that bloom early because they pop up. They're a sign that spring is here, or maybe it's not here quite yet, but it's coming very soon. And it gives you some enjoyment. It gives you some flower. It gives you some color. It gives you some cut flowers. There's nothing better than in February to bring in some cut daffodils into the home and say spring is coming, it's on the way. So to have some color, to have some blooming plants in February is very valuable. I think a lot of people come in and say, my daffodils are blooming early. I think that's a great thing. They don't mind the cold. A freeze won't affect them. So they're just so easy to grow. And when you get that bloom out in that kind of, very barren kind of look that we have in the winter sometimes. So in February, when you have those pops of yellows and whites throughout the landscape, it's an amazing thing. And I think it's very, very cool. So I love the early blooming varieties. So let's talk about how to plant them before we get into just kind of the basics on how to plant them before we get into specific varieties. So we always want to amend our soil, whether we're planting a root ball, a plant with a root, or we're planting seeds, or we're planting bulbs. So our soil, if you're going into a new area that maybe hasn't been amended before, then we always want to add some organic matter. Compost is super, super important. It's something that our soil lacks the most of. And so what you want to do is when you go to dig your hole, and we'll talk about how the different ways that you can do this, you can either dig a single hole with something like a bulb planter, that you can just dig a single hole, plant your bulb, or we can dig kind of a trough, we can dig a border. So you can do lots and lots of different styles for digging your hole and getting it prepared. But the soil that we dig out, we want to amend that, and we want to add compost. Compost is very, very important. Now, if it's a very, very tough clay soil, bulbs are pretty strong plants. They're power-packed little bulbs. I mean, you got everything in here that it needs to survive, basically. And when it comes to burst out of that, when it's time to grow, it's going to break through a lot of things. And that's why they're so durable and so easy to grow. But if you've got heavy clay soil, I might recommend perlite as well. Perlite are those little white styrofoamy looking things that you see in potting soils. So that you can buy by itself. You can get a planting mix that has it both in there, but I like compost. Compost is by far the most beneficial thing that you can do. It adds organic matter, it breaks up clay soils, it helps retain moisture in sandy soils. So depending on your soil type, I'm almost always going to recommend compost as a soil amendment, as the main base of your soil amendment. So what you want to do is dig your hole, the soil you put off to the side, you mix in some compost. If it's clay, we might add some perlite. If it's sandy, we might add some peat moss to help retain a little bit moisture and thicken up the soil a little bit. We might recommend those. And usually you want to do about a third of each. So the pile that you put off to the side, you want to add about a third of compost and a third of perlite or a third of peat, depending on your soil type. Mix that up and then use that to fill over top of the bulbs. So very, very simple. Compost is extremely beneficial. Whenever we do any garden project, I'm almost always going to recommend compost because I think it's super, super important. Okay, then also we can feed. So at that point, when we plant our bulbs, it's not a bad idea to throw some bulb food in there. Love Bulb Tone by Espoma. Very, very simple, organic, very easy to use. Just grab a little handful, throw it in there. Don't have to be super, super specific. If you want to, there's directions on the back on exactly how much to apply. And we are going to apply this again later in the season. I'll tell you about that. You can also use Biotone, which is awesome. Biotone starter fertilizer is an amazing starter fertilizer. So it's got that starter kind of root development, which is what bulbs like, is phosphorus. So I'll get to that specifically here in a second. But Biotone is awesome because it's got mycorrhizae and beneficial bacteria. These little organisms attach themselves to the roots and form a symbiotic relationship with the plant. And they give, and then they take things that the plant are giving away, and then they give things back to the plant that the plant wants. So Biotone is awesome. It stays with the plant for almost the entirety of its life. It's a really, really cool thing. This needs to get to the root system. So this only wants to be used during the time of planting. So if you got an established plant, this isn't the one for you. But if you're planting bulbs, it's a great time to throw this over the top. It's amazing. Awesome, awesome thing that you can do, especially when we're talking about our vegetable garden. When we talk about garlic and onions and those types of things, Biotone is a huge help. It's a huge starter. Let's talk about the numbers, and I'm going to grab a bag of bone meal here. So bone meal is a organic fertilizer, but if you look on the back, or if you look on any fertilizer, you're going to see three numbers. Those are your nitrogen, your phosphorus, and your potassium. And the way that I always like to explain them, and the way that I remember them, is the first number is up. The next number is down, and the last number is all around. So up, down, all around. The first number is nitrogen, upward growth, green growth. Think green leaves, green foliage. So if you've got a high nitrogen number, you're going to get a lot of green growth. The middle number is phosphorus, down, root development, which also helps produce blooms. So if you see a blooming formula, you're going to have a high middle number because that's going to help blooms, but it also helps produce more roots. And so on bone meal, you're going to have a 4, 12, 0. So 12 is a higher phosphorus, and that's what bone meal provides you. It's a higher phosphorus, which is going to help develop root system, which is the bulb. So that's what bone meal does. And a lot of people use bone meal specifically for bulbs. That's awesome. It's a great option. And this is what you can throw down. So you've got a couple different options. I always like to throw down some Biotone starter and then a little bit of bone meal on top. And then you've got a great growing condition. This is a 4-3-3. It's got a little bit of starter fertilizer, but really what I'm getting after on this one is the mycorrhizae and those beneficial bacteria that are going to stay with the plant And then bone meal is going to add all that phosphorus. And then the last number that I didn't talk about is potassium. This one doesn't have any. It's a 4-12-0. Potassium is just kind of an all-around. And so that's why we say up, down, all around. So potassium is going to be kind of an all-around protector. You're going to see high potassium levels in a winterizer fertilizer, something that's going to help protect a lawn through a winter season. So a lot of times we recommend for St. Augustine or zoysia or Bermuda, those plants, those lawns that are going dormant, we recommend a winterizer fertilizer. It's going to be high in potassium. It's going to protect that plant, that root system through the winter months. So that's what those three numbers are when you're looking at a fertilizer: up, down, all around. Very easy to remember: green growth, root growth, and then an all-around protector. So that kind of helps, hopefully you understand the idea behind those different types of fertilizer. Biotone, bone meal, awesome. Bulb tone, those numbers are 353. So again, it's organic, so it's going to be a little bit lighter, which is nice because if you accidentally dump the whole bag in there, you're not going to hurt anything. But a 353 is going to be a little bit higher in phosphorus and going to allow that bulb to get bigger and grow. So then we're going to fill it back in with our amended soil. We're going to plant it at the right depth. We're going to add our fertilizer, our biotone in our bone meal, or a biotone in our bulb tone. We're going to put that over the top, and then we're going to put our soil down, and then we're going to water them in, and then we're done. I mean, it's that simple. Now, an additional step would be mulching. I definitely recommend mulching. Mulching, I think, finishes off the landscape, finishes off the look. It also helps protect those bulbs if we get extremely cold temperatures, although they'll be fine in the soil. But it does help add some organic matter. It helps keep your soil evenly moist. And when you water, or when you have a heavy rain, mulch kind of keeps that soil in place and prevents runoff and prevents, different things. So if you're planting bulbs on a little bit of a higher area and you disturb the soil and then we get a heavy rainfall, that soil tends to move a little bit. And mulch kind of helps keep everything in place. And I think it just makes the landscape look better. So mulching will help, and like I said, it really keeps that moisture more even, which I really love. So mulching will definitely help. Whether you're doing these in raised beds, or you're doing them in the landscape, or you're doing them in the container. So let's talk about that. How to use bulbs before we get into the specifics. So how are we going to use bulbs in the landscape? So we can use them for borders. You can use them for mass plantings. So borders, the way you would do that is say, okay, in this area I want to create a swale or a border of daffodil bulbs, for instance. So what you would do is just dig your trench, dig a swale, dig the shape that you want them to grow in. Maybe you want them a little bit thicker in one patch and then coming a little bit thinner. Let me see if I can do this for you. I've got my whiteboard here, which I always find handy because I'm a visual person. I like to see things. So let's say I've got, a bed. I'm just going to draw a bed shape here. Nothing real fancy. But I want my bulbs to be a little bit of a border in this one section. So there we go. So you can dig your hole just kind of in that shape. So maybe that's where I'm going to plant my daffodils, and then maybe I'll plant some tulips. In a shape like that. So those are how I'm going to dig my holes. Well, let's see if I can get this on the screen. So that's how I might dig my trench. Now, you can also just do mass plantings. So you could dig a section like, just like you would plot a shrub or something. So you might just dig some bigger holes and plant tulips and daffodils and muscari. You might mix them all together. And we'll talk about, we've got mixes that you can get. They're awesome. But this is just the idea of how you might plant them. And you might plant them individually if you want to. Maybe you want to come through and just pop some in a single border line like that. So you could just plant them individually as well. Now, you're always going to get more impact with more planted together. So by planting a little bit closer together, you're going to get a little bit more impact over time. And having at least 3 bulbs planted in a hole together is going to give you a little bit more impact. It's going to give you a little bit more bloom. Depends on the plant type as to how many blooms you might get. Tulips are going to plant, or if you plant one tulip, you're going to get one little bulb or one plant coming out and one bloom. Daffodils, you can get multiple blooms out of one bulb. So think about that as well. So it just depends on how you want to use them. Now you can also use them in perennial gardens and pollinator gardens. If you're thinking about hummingbirds and bees, they do offer some pollen to those early season pollinators out there, which always helps. And then containers. containers are awesome. So, you know, I love to plant just take a terracotta pot, put your bulbs in first, you know, at different layers and different levels as they are to be planted at certain depths, and then put some pansies over the top. And all that pansy bloom will last all winter long. And then in the spring, you'll get this amazing show in your container. And then if you want to rip it apart at that point, you can go and take them and plant them in the spring. It's not a bad time to plant them, even with green growth. So after it's done its bloom thing and you're done with the container, go plant those bulbs around in the landscape. Awesome, awesome idea. I love doing containers, and maybe I'll throw that into my container workshop on Friday. So this Friday when I'm doing my webinar on fall containers, maybe I'll throw some bulbs in there so you can see kind of the idea of that. And how that works. So love them in containers, love them in the landscape, a perennial garden, a butterfly garden, a pollinator garden, lots and lots of different uses. They make great cut flowers, so a lot of them are awesome for cut flowers. I mean, I just always remember as a kid, you know, going out and picking a bundle of them and bringing them in the house. It's just an easy thing to do, whether they're in a naturalized setting or whether they're in a formal landscape. Very, very great resource to have cut flowers, daffodils, tulips, muscari, alliums. There's lots of them. We're going to talk about all of those here in a second. But I just want to talk to you about how to use them. Okay, so then the first thing I want to talk about is the vegetables. So onions and garlic are what you can plant now. So I'm going to show you a couple of these. So let me get my bulbs in order here. So onions are very, very easy to grow. I know a lot of people are out doing vegetable gardening, and the fall vegetable garden is super easy and very rewarding and very beneficial, whether you're planting spinach or lettuce or any of those things. And you can watch, I did a whole video on those a few weeks back. So it's still a great time to continue to think about that if you want to plant some spinach or radishes or carrots or turnips or beets, lettuces, kales, collards, the list goes on and on. But also onions and garlic are very, very easy to do. So this is a white snowball onion. So I don't know if you can see that package. And I'm just going to hold up the packages. Some of them I'll open up and show you the bulbs, but these just look like little white onions, basically. And what these are going to do is you can plant these. If you've ever heard the term onion set, this is what they're talking about. So in this package, you get 60 onions. So you get 60 onions in here, and you just plant them. These are 3/4 of an inch deep. So you're only going to plant them a little bit deep, just barely underneath the soil. They get about 8 to 10 inches high. You might even get some green onions before the winter hits them. So you might get some green onion shoots that you can use in your salads or in your cooking. And then they're going to go dormant. So we're going to have a hard freeze. They're going to basically go dormant. But the bulb in this fall period, growing into the winter, is going to get bigger. And then in the spring, you're going to see the new green growth come out. You're going to be able to, again, harvest some greens if you want to. And then the bulb's going to get pretty big by late spring. You can go and harvest a full-size onion. And that's how this works. So in here, I can't remember the price, so don't quote me on the price. I'll try and get you the prices here in a little bit. But let's say it's $9.99 or $4.99. I think they're $4.99. Then you can get 60 onions for $4.99. And it's so easy to do. And plus, you're going to get some green onions, and then you'll get this nice big onion by the end of the spring. You can also do onions from seed, but those probably need to be started a little bit earlier than now. You can still probably get them in if you want to try that. But onion bulb sets are very, very easy to do and a lot of fun and very rewarding. And these are just the white onions, just your traditional white onion. And these are red onions. So these are just red Carmen is the variety. And all of our vegetable bulbs are going to be GMO free, which is really, really nice. But these are just red onions. So you can just see in the back, they're just those normal red onions. Very, very easy to do. These are easy. I'm not going to pull these out. They're very easy to understand which direction to plant them because they've got little roots down the bottom, like any onion that you probably bought in the store. Have little roots down the bottom. It's got a little pointy top, and that's how the direction of how you plant them. So very, very simple, easy things to do are onions. And then, of course, shallots. So shallots, these are yellow shallots are the ones that we carry. These you're going to plant about 2 inches deep. Very easy to grow. You're going to harvest them in early to mid-summer. So again, kind of that late spring, early summer. Typically in this area, May to June is when you're going to get your onions and your shallots. But another really good one are shallots, and they're easy to grow. And then the last one is garlic. So garlic's another one. I've got lots of varieties here. I want to show you some of these. There's lots of choices in garlic. And I'll pull one of these out and show you kind of how you plant these too. So we'll start with, this one's Killarney Red. So this is a kind of a different looking garlic. Nice one. Garlic is very, very easy to do. You plant it now, and I'll show you, because you might be saying, well, that one only had 2 garlic bulbs. And this one's got 3 garlic bulbs. So this is California garlic. So this is just a regular California garlic. And then we've got elephant garlic, which is kind of cool. So elephant garlic is going to be these huge chunks of garlic. So if you really love cooking with garlic, these give you these huge cloves of garlic. So elephant garlic, as you can see right there, that nice big clove. And then we've got harvest blend. So this is a blend of a lot of different types of garlics. And then we've got Chinese pink garlic. And we've got the Spanish Roja garlic. So we've got a lot of different varieties of garlics, a lot of different choices here. I'm going to open up this harvest blend so we can look at a couple different types here that are going to be in here. And then that way you can see what it is we've got and how to plant them. I think this is kind of important to be able to see this. So what you would do is just basically work your soil like I typically, like I recommended earlier, add some organic matter with compost. If you're doing this in a raised bed, you can even do these in pots or containers. So very easy to do. But basically what you're going to do, and so this one's got 6 bulbs in it. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to take your garlic bulb here. And we don't want to take off too much of this outer coating. We really don't want to take that. But what we want to do is just kind of loosen it up, just like we would be doing with your garlic when you were going to use it for cooking. And then this right here is what you're going to plant. So this bulb right here might have 10, 15, 20 little plants, little basically bulbs. And this is how you're going to plant this. So you're just going to take this and you're going to put the flat side. So you can see that flat side right there. You're going to put that down with the pointy side up. And I want to try and keep as much of this outer shell or this outer, what you might call it, the coating, that we're going to basically leave as much of that on there as possible, because that'll help it prevent it from rotting. But basically you're just going to plant them like that, and you're going to get your garlic going from there. So very, very easy to do. And this is going to turn into this. So in the harvest time frame, which is typically, I don't know if it listed on the package, so 3 to 4 months is its time frame to harvest. Now we're going to go through the winter period, so it's not going to be growing at all. Typically you're not going to get it in this fall season. When you plant garlic in the spring, that's for your fall harvest. But garlic that you plant in the fall, you'll get in the spring. So about mid to late spring, typically, what you're going to do is you're going to see the green growth come out. You're going to have your green garlic leaves coming out. And then as you start to see some of them wither on the bottom, so usually I say the bottom third leaves, that's when you want to harvest garlic. You don't want to let it go completely fall apart, go brown, because at that point it's going to be very tough. So you want to harvest it around that time. Depends on the season, but typically, again, it's going to be in that May to June time frame. So late spring, early summer, we're going to go out there, harvest our garlic, pull them up, then we're going to dry them out. Very, very simple process. Just be careful, dig them out very easily. That's why I love doing them in raised beds or containers, because you can easily get them out, but you can do them right in the ground. They're super, super simple. You're just going to plant that. Then you're going to get a bulb. So then you're going to get your garlic bulb. Then you can dry them, store them, and use them for cooking all season long, and then you can plant them again in the fall. So that's what's so cool, is this is a renewable resource that you can keep on planting and keep on doing. There's lots of different types out there. I don't want to get too specific on hard necks or soft necks or any of those. Pick the garlic that you like cooking with best, that you probably know. And so a garlic blend is going to give you lots of different types of garlics. You might have a specific variety that you like. But this little guy, I think this is the coolest thing, is this little guy is going to turn into this next year, and then you've got your next season's crop. You're going to use some for cooking, but then you might store 6 or 10 of them and plant all those cloves again, and then you're going to get a whole nother crop. And it's a renewable resource. You can just keep on building and building on it. So that's what I love so much about garlic. Garlic is super, super easy, does very well. You will have to dig it up. You don't typically want to leave it through the summer time frame. So the ones that you plant in the spring are going to be more of a mid-summer harvest. so you can get a different harvest. But that's why I love planting garlic in the fall. I think it's the best time to plant them because you get an earlier harvest time frame. Typically, like I say, in that May time frame is when you'll harvest them, and then you can store them and dry them over the summer, and then you plant them again in the fall, and it's a renewable resource. Awesome, awesome plant. Now, in the spring, what you can plant from bulb or from rhizome is going to be asparagus, rhubarb, potatoes, garlic, onions, again. So you got lots and lots of choices in the spring as well. So whether you're planting in the fall or the spring, I think fall is all about onions and garlic. Spring, you get a little bit more choices, obviously, to choose from. But that's kind of the vegetable world of bulbs, what we classify as bulbs. So now let's talk about flowers. I got a lot of them around here. So the first one I'm going to talk about, coming off the vegetable talk, is alliums. Alliums are onions, but these are ornamental. So not really for eating, but for growing for these amazing blooms. They are just absolutely spectacular. I don't know if you can quite see that, but they're so cool. They get this little onion-looking little growth that comes out of the ground. So let's see what it says on the package. So first it says deer and critter resistant, which you love. And I'll talk about solutions at the end and which ones, and but I'm going to read some of these packages so you kind of get an idea of what they are. Deer and critter resistant, blooms in late spring, this specific variety, and this one gets 26 to 28 inches high, so almost 3 feet, so that's a pretty good height. But it gets this huge purple bloom, and this one's called Purple Sensation. So really, really cool. This package, I get 12 of these. So the planting depth is 6 inches, very, very easy to grow. It's going to get this little green kind of onion looking growth, but then it's going to send up this long stem. Let's see if I can find another. There we go. So this one's called Globe Master. This is a big one. So, but you can see that stem down there, and it's just going to send up this long stem bloom stalk, and it's going to have this huge bloom on it. Really, really cool. So this is called Allium Globe Master. Now, again, what's really cool is they're perennial. They're going to make it through the winter, and they're going to spread, and they're going to multiply, and they're going to start to naturalize, and then you can go and dig them up and replant them if you want to move some around. Very, very easy to do, and that's with all bulbs. But we've got a lot of different varieties of this. One's called Globe Master. This one gets about 36 to 40 inches high, so kind of in the back of the landscape or back of the flower bed, you might have these. They're really, really cool. This one I'm not going to be able to pronounce probably, but Schuberti. Schuberti is an excellent cut flower, blooms in late spring, early summer, but look at that bloom on that. Isn't that cool? So really, really neat, and you can see that girl holding it, how big that bloom can get. So really, really cool. Alliums are awesome. There's a lot of different varieties of them. The Gigantium, the Globe Master is awesome. Let's see, I've got a white one here called Mount Everest. Look at that, gorgeous. So, and just look at that bulb. I mean, again, I'm not going to take this one out, but you can see, I don't know if you can see through the package, there's roots on that side, and then there's a point on the top. That's the way you plant it. Roots down, point up. Very, very simple. Alliums are going to look similar to an onion or maybe even a garlic clove a little bit. And that's how you're going to plant them. But alliums are awesome. They come back year after year, and they multiply, and you get these really cool looking blooms coming out of them. So alliums are a great choice for the landscape as well. Make great cut flowers for flower arrangements, and I just think they're stunning to see in the landscape. Planted kind of in the back, you don't have to worry so much about the green growth. It's not going to be show-stopping necessarily, but when they send up those bloom spikes, it's absolutely amazing, and they last a long time too, which is really cool. So alliums are a great choice. All right, so what else do we got to talk about? Let's go with hyacinths. Hyacinths are another great one. And I'm going to talk about hyacinths here because hyacinths are fragrant. They're short, so they only get about 8 to 12 inches tall. They bloom in that early kind of mid-spring time frame, so kind of right when everything is coming to a life. So if you're looking for different colors, these come in a wide range of colors. The whites, the pinks, the yellows, the reds, the purples, the blues. So hyacinths are awesome. What I will tell you about hyacinths, a little tip about hyacinths, is some people might find that the oils that come out of the bulb might irritate your skin. So I always wear gloves when working with hyacinths, just to be careful. I'm not allergic to them. So just be careful. If you're picking them up in the store, you might just grab them by the top. And if you do know that you might be allergic to them, and just be careful handling them and use gloves, and then wash your hands afterwards, and try not to touch your face and that kind of stuff. So, but hyacinths are awesome. Now, what's an important thing, and I don't know if I grabbed one. I don't think I did. But whenever you're buying some bulbs in the store, and especially here, if it ever says prepared, so this one doesn't say it, but this is 6 hyacinths. This is Carnegie. It's a white one. If it had said prepared right here, prepared means that they're ready to bloom inside. And typically what you're going to find is with prepared bulbs, they're not going to come in a package usually. They're going to say it on the box, and your bulbs are going to be loose. So you're going to find a loose bulb like this. Like this is a paper white. Now this is a prepared one, which means it has already gone through the cooling phase, and it thinks right now is spring. So if I plant these outside right now, they're probably going to bloom fairly quickly. However, that's not why they're prepared. They're prepared for you to bloom them indoors. And so we're going to talk about that at the end with paper whites, hyacinths, and amaryllis. A couple different options there. But we'll talk about that at the end. But I just wanted to throw that out there because if you're buying hyacinths to plant in the ground, make sure they're not prepared hyacinths. Make sure they're just in a normal package like this, 6 of them, and it doesn't say prepared anywhere on it. These you're going to plant at about a 6-inch depth as well. Very easy to grow. I love the foliage on it. It's that kind of cool, thick foliage that comes up and kind of protects that bloom, and then that bloom spike comes right up in there. So we got white ones. I love the Delft blue. Really, really pretty color. And then, of course, we've got mixes. So this gives you 10 hyacinth bulbs, and there's lots and lots of different colors. So you get a whole wide range of colors, or you can buy specific colors. But I love these like around mailboxes, even in containers, awesome in containers because you can bring it when it blooms closer to your front doorstep, so you catch that fragrance when you walk outside in the morning. Awesome, awesome plant. And then the prepared ones are awesome too. So we'll talk about that at the end. But hyacinths are very, very easy to do. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is I want to go into some different ones before we get into the tulips and the daffodils. Tulips and daffodils, by far my favorite. Get to those in a second. I want to talk about some other ones that you might not know about. This is cool. This is called a red spider lily. So Lycoris or red spider lily, you probably have seen these. Very naturalizing. So the downfall is you're only going to get 1 per package, but they're not super, super expensive. I want to say maybe $3.99, $4.99. Again, I don't know all my prices off the top of my head. But they're not super expensive, and that's kind of, again, the best thing about bulbs is they're economical, and they're going to multiply, and these are going to multiply for sure. They're very, very naturalizing. You've probably seen them around in the area. They're very common. They bloom in, I believe it's early, so this one says blooms early fall, so you plant them in the fall, but typically they're going to bloom kind of in the spring and fall, which is what I love about them. So you're going to get kind of a 2-bloom period. So they get about 12 to 16 inches high. Really, really easy to grow, full sun to partial shade, super, super easy plant, and they do spread. So be careful with this one. If it ever says naturalizer, great naturalizer right there on the package. That means that it's going to spread. And so it's going to kind of start to naturalize. It's going to start to kind of take over an area. So if you've got an area that you just want some pretty plants to kind of grow and kind of naturalize, this is a great one. They work great with daffodils, mix them in. Awesome, awesome plant. And then I love these. So this is snowflakes, or some people might call them snowbells. A little white flower, kind of similar to a daffodil that hangs over. But these are going to bloom in early spring. It's kind of that first sign. I mean, a lot of times you see these blooming with snow around them sometimes if we get a little late snow. You can plant these in a full shade, which is what I love about them. So this is kind of more that sun to shade. Even partial sun is actually pretty much preferred. So you probably wouldn't typically see these out in full sun. But if you got a shady garden, this is an awesome, awesome bulb. And you get 5 of these in a package. They also will spread. So again, another great naturalizer. Very easy to do. You don't have to plant them very deep, 3 to 4 inches deep. So don't ask me to pronounce the Latin name. I'm not good at Latin. But I always call them snowbells or snowflakes. So awesome, awesome plant. Great little cut flower too. Especially up on a mantle where those blooms kind of hang over a little bit and you can kind of see them inside them. But this is a really, really cool one. Again, these are just kind of less common bulbs that you don't typically know about. This is a ranunculus. So ranunculus is really, really cool. These are awesome flowers. I mean, tons and tons of petals. So that very formal kind of bloom. It's a great cut flower. It lasts a very, very long time for a cut flower. You're only going to plant these about 3 inches deep. They only get about 12 to 16 inches tall, so not very, very big. They can grow in full sun to even a little bit of shade, so very, very easy bulb to plant. I am going to open these up because I want you to see them. they're kind of different looking. So, you know, when you typically think of a bulb, you think of that, you know, you think of a bulb. You think of it like an onion. But let me open this up so you can see what these look like, because they're kind of different looking. Because this package says 24 of them, and so you're kind of looking at this saying, how is that 24 of them? But let me show you what they look like. So they kind of look at like this little pine cone thing. So there you go. You can kind of see that. Oh, let me pull it up, see if I can get it to focus on it. But it's kind of this weird looking thing. You see those little hairy things? Those are the roots. And that's how you want to plant it, is down like that. And then you'll have the growth coming up from that. And your packages are pretty good about telling you too about which way to plant the bulb, which way's up and which way's down. But that's kind of how that bulb looks. Let's see if I can get it to focus on it. There you go. So you see those little roots hanging out the bottom. So that's ranunculus, and they're little and they're tiny. You only plant them, like I said, 3 inches deep. Very, very easy to grow. But ranunculus are another good one, and they'll come back year after year after year. Awesome, awesome little plant. Something that you don't see a lot of. So the crocus are another one. Crocus is another one. Kind of, a lot of people confuse them sometimes with tulips sometimes. But crocus are awesome. Again, I love them because they're short. And so I love to kind of layer my things and have some low, some high, kind of building up to the back of a garden or of a landscape. So these get about 4 to 5 inches tall, not very tall. They bloom in early spring, kind of that one of the first blooms of spring are crocus. And so this one's called, it's a mix of this purple and white stripe, and then the purple and then the white. So you kind of get that really cool kind of purple bluish mix. Really, really nice. Awesome, awesome plant. Easy to grow. 50 of them. They're small. I'm actually going to show you these too. Let's see. I think this is the only package I grabbed. But let me see if I can show you one of these, because I think these are kind of cool looking bulbs too. And again, when you're going to make like a container of these, and I'll talk about this maybe on Friday when I do my container class on how to plant bulbs in your containers. Lots of these have different planting depths. So 3 inches compared to a daffodil that might be 6 inches. So you start to layer them. But this is it's a very tiny little bulb. Again, let me see if I can get out of there. Let me see if I can get it to focus on there. But I just love the way it looks. It's kind of got this thready look. And so let's see if you can see. That's the pointy side. And then that's the root side, that little flat side. So again, very easy to kind of plant those. You can see kind of the little hairy roots coming out of the end. You can see the pointy top, and that's how you're going to plant it. Flat side down, pointy top up. Very, very easy to do. I like to just dig kind of a trough and then just lay these in there. Nice and easy. You don't have to dig it very deep. It's only 3 inches down, so super, super easy, and you get 50 plants. So again, when we talk about value, I mean, to get 50 little plants is amazing, and they're perennials. They're going to come back year after year. Awesome, awesome plant, and these are full sun. So definitely one thing about crocuses is they love full sun. So in a little bit of shade, they're not going to do as well, but in full sun, they do great. And also think about that too. I mean, when you're planting these plants, if they're in a little bit of shade, but in the winter is when they bloom, or late winter, early spring. So if you're planting an early spring variety, which is what crocus are, because I said full sun, but I have some in a little bit of an area where it doesn't get a lot of sun, but it gets a lot in the winter because the trees have lost their leaves. But then it gets a little protected when we get real hot, and that's okay. Now they're not multiplying and they're not spreading very quickly, but they're doing fine. And I might have to add a little bit more plant food to them to get them to bloom a little bit better for me. But very, very easy to do. When I talk about the sun to shade portion is very simple to kind of know that you can kind of try these in different areas. So then of course the last one that I kind of grabbed was Dutch irises. Dutch irises are awesome. This is a really pretty one. This one's called Blue Ribbon. It's got that blue with that kind of yellow kind of stripe or yellow throat in there. Really, really nice. Irises are super, super easy. You only plant these about 4 inches deep. Nice looking little bulb in the back. You can see those. These are get about 20 to 24 inches tall, so they're going to get fairly tall, about 2 feet tall. But it's got that gorgeous iris kind of foliage on it. I don't know if you can see the foliage in there, but it's got kind of that cool blade look, that kind of grassy blade look. But Dutch irises are very, very easy to grow. These bloom in late spring, so they're awesome cut flowers, bloom in late spring, 20 to 24 inches tall, plant them 4 inches deep, and full sun. Now, I think irises can grow anywhere. Irises are one of kind of those most indestructible plants. Dutch irises are slightly different. I do typically recommend a little bit more sun on these, but irises are in that class of plants that I think are indestructible and can grow pretty much anywhere. So this is a great, easy one and kind of a different color, and something that you don't typically see a lot of. And again, if it's going to make it through the winter here, it's going to be a perennial. It's going to come back year after year. That's why I love all these fall bulbs. All right, so now let's do tulips first and save daffodils for last. Daffodils are my favorite, so I'll save that for last. Save the best for last. So tulips, I forgot one more. I mentioned muscari a couple times, and so I opted to not show it to you. But muscari is one of my favorites, kind of a different plant. Really pretty little blue bell-shaped stalk. So you get the stalk with all these little blue flowers all over it, kind of hanging down. They bloom in mid-spring, so typically that early to mid-spring time frame. Again, a nice short little plant. You can kind of see that green foliage down here at the bottom, these kind of little spiky green foliage that comes out. It's a long-lasting bloom. They bloom for a fair amount of time, which is nice, and these can grow in full sun to partial shade, so these can grow well into the shade as well. Planting depth is only 3 inches. Very simple kind of bulb. Look, it's got a very daffodil looking it's a little miniature daffodil bulb, so I'm not going to pull those out so you can see them, but easy to grow. 60 of them in a package. So you're getting 60 perennials, 60 plants. That's why I love bulbs. Super, super easy, very beneficial, come back year after year. And so muscari is another great one. Great addition to the bulb garden. All right, so now let's talk about tulips. Let's see, which one do I want to grab first? All right, so tulips, I think are just cool looking bulbs. I mean, look at that package. Look at that bulb. It is just awesome looking. I love how you get some of that white of the skin when the skin kind of falls off, that covering, that protective layer. Just awesome, awesome looking bulb. It just looks so healthy and so kind of inspiring. I just love seeing that. So tulip bulbs are very, very easy to grow. Now, a lot of us probably haven't had amazing success with tulips. Tulips have been hybridized over the years, and so tend to lose a little bit of their strength when they've done that. And what they're looking for is cut flowers. I mean, one of the best spring cut flowers. Probably the hardest thing about tulips is the animals. The animals love to eat them. They're very, very tasty. They're like candy to squirrels and rabbits. Even deer will dig them up. And of course, voles are a problem too. So as pretty as I think that bulb is, obviously so do our little critters that live in our area. They think they look tasty as well, and they are tasty to them, so they're going to find these and dig them up. So I've got a couple tips and tricks for you here that I'll tell you in a minute, but tulips are gorgeous when you get them right. Definitely easy to plant. They can grow in full sun to a little bit of shade. I do think they stand up a little bit better and a little bit stronger in full sun. They bloom in different periods of spring. So you've got some early spring bloomers, mid-spring bloomers, and late spring bloomers. So again, a little bit of planning of how you want to do that. And I've got a great option for you here in a second that I'll show you. But Darwin hybrids are one of my favorites. So this is called Appledorn. It's a red, just a pure red. But whenever you see the Darwin hybrids are one of the best, one of the oldest varieties of tulips out there. Very, very easy to grow, very reliable, pretty much going to get a bloom every single year, and the potential of it coming back year after year. So like I said, they can make it through the winter. They're a perennial. Typically what happens is they might lose some of their strength. And so one thing that I'll recommend at the end, I'll tell you about this a little bit more, but is to leave that foliage until it completely kind of goes away. And another feed in the spring when it's done blooming will help it get through those months and into the winter season again so that it can come back year after year. But a lot of people have great success. I mean, the climate here is right for tulips to be able to come back year after year. So definitely don't treat these as annuals. I treat them as a perennial. They can come back year after year, and Darwin hybrids are my favorites. And one reason is because as they're mid-spring, they also don't get quite as tall. So they're only going to get about 18 to 20, 22 inches tall. So not super, super tall. You don't have to plant them real deep. All planting depths on tulips is typically 4 to 6 inches. So not super, super deep. And the blooms last a long time, and they're great cut flowers. And it's just kind of another one of those happy blooms. It just kind of makes you happy. Single bloom typically. Now there are some doubles. I'll show you those in a minute. But single petal count, so you're only going to have kind of one row of petals, but the way that it just holds those petals up, tulips are awesome. So Darwin hybrids are one of my favorites. Very reliable. Typically what a lot of people experience with tulips is they tend to fall over. You know, the bloom comes up, it forms that gorgeous bloom, and then they kind of tend to waver a little bit. Maybe we get a windstorm or something, they tend to fall apart. But Darwin hybrids are very, very strong, which is why it's one of my favorites. So let's show you, as I mentioned, there are some double forms. So this is called Razzle Dazzle. So this is a mix of a couple different doubles. Let's see if you can see that package. So really kind of cool. So these are going to have double the petal count, maybe even triple the petal count on some of them. But it's going to give you a little bit more of that kind of peony type of bloom. But really, really pretty, easy to grow. These get about 14 to 16 inches high, so that kind of nice height range, and just gorgeous foliage. That kind of blue-green foliage that comes out on them are awesome. Let's see what else we got. So these are, this one's called Calypso. So this is kind of one of what we call maybe the species mix of tulips. Species mix are cool because they only get about 10 to 12 inches high, so they're a little bit shorter tulips, so kind of better if you're kind of, again, planting for different heights, then these are a great option. 4 to 6 inch plant depth, 10 to 12 inch plant height, blooms in early spring. Typically, these are going to be one of the first tulips to come up out of the ground, and I just love that foliage. I don't know if you can see that foliage on there, but it's got a little bit of maroon in the line, in the vein of the foliage there, so just awesome. And this one's called Calypso. Can't quite see it on camera, but it is like a really salmony, like bright salmon color. So really kind of just different, kind of unique, and that's what I love. We carry some of the basic bulbs, the ones that are reliable, but we also carry a lot of unique ones too, and this would be a species type of tulip. Very, very unique. Let's see. Let me go through a couple other ones real quick. So this is called Champagne Supernova. So there's mixes too, which are really cool. So this one blooms in mid-spring. The height is a range of anywhere from 12 to 18 inches high. So again, this is a mix, so you're going to get a lot of different types. I don't know, again, if you can see that package very well, but you're going to get some doubles in there. You're going to get some daffodils in here as well. So you get some yellow, some white, some pink, some salmon, and then some daffodils that kind of pull it all together. So you're going to get a mix. So a lot of these come in mixes where you're going to get a lot of different types of plants. And I've got some here that I'm going to show you more of, but mixes are really cool because if you want to take the thinking out of it, just get a mix, plant them in a nice trough, 4 to 6 inches deep, and then just cover them with soil, water them in, and you've got this gorgeous bouquet that's going to come out of your yard or landscape or container in the spring. Awesome, awesome thing. This one's called Double Triumph. So these are all tulips. You got the double pink tulip, and then you've got this really cool kind of lime green and white tulip. So just again, another mix that's very, very different. You're going to get 12 bulbs in this one, blooms in mid-spring, not a very tall one, about 18 inches tall, but you get that mix of different tulips in one package. Let's see, this is a specialty blend, so this is a really cool one. So if you start to get confused about whether it's early, mid, or late, we do carry specific colors in what they call non-stop. So this is a non-stop yellow, and what that means is there's different varieties of yellow tulip bulbs in here, but there's an early, mid, and late spring blooming variety in each package. So you're going to get a longer time frame. That's why they call it non-stop yellow, because it's going to bloom in this early spring, mid-spring, and late spring. Now, when you get those, they do range in heights because so that your early spring bloomers, your mid-spring bloomers, and your late spring bloomers are going to range in heights, typically going taller as the season goes. And that's why the late spring bloomers are harder to find typically because they get pretty tall and most people can't find a spot for those in the landscape. Also, they tend to fall over. So why we tend to kind of stick to the early to mid-season because by late spring, you've got lots of other choices for blooms. But in that early to mid time frame, you don't have as many choices. And so this is a great option because it takes the guesswork out. It's just going to give you blooms all the way through. So if you see that non-stop yellow, I think we've got non-stop red, non-stop orange. Great little blend, 28 bulbs, 28 plants. Awesome, awesome deal. So this one is called a Fosterania tulips. These are, again, an early season bloomer. So just, again, kind of a different variety, kind of different foliage. You can't quite see it on this package, but a single bloom, really, really pretty. Let's see if I can get that to show up there. You get 10 bulbs in here. They only get about 14 to 16 inches tall. Again, I love the shorter tulips. They just do very, very well in this area. And then you get some that are multicolored in one bloom. So again, a lot of choices here. This one's a Darwin hybrid again. This one's called Oxford's Elite, but I just love how you get that yellow edge and then that kind of red to orange color. So that kind of tropical looking bloom, awesome, awesome plant. And it's a Darwin hybrid, which is awesome, which makes them very, very reliable and very easy to grow. And you get that multicolored bloom. So lots and lots of choices out there in tulips. You've also got your bigger bags. So this one's called a Darwin hybrid mix. I love this guy. 50 plants. You get 50 bulbs in this package. This one's $29.99. So let's see if we can do the math here real quick. That's going to be less than $1 per plant. You can't get that I mean, you can't come in and buy a tulip. You can't even buy a cut tulip flower for about that price. So let's say it's going to be about 75 cents per plant. So you're going to get 50 plants in this package, and it's going to be all the Darwin hybrids, which means they're all going to bloom in that kind of early to mid-season. They're all going to get anywhere from 18 to 20, 22 inches tall, that perfect height range, and they're very, very valuable, and they're very easy to grow. So again, I love these bigger bulk packages that you can get. Awesome, awesome deal, and you get a whole mix of colors. This is going to have the reds and the pinks and the oranges and the whites and the yellows, all of those mixed right in there. So that's a great deal as well. And tulips are there's kind of the only issue that I always have with tulips is either one, they didn't come back. So let's talk about that. If your tulip bulb doesn't come back year after year, then we need to do something. I would say check the sun. Make sure it's in full sun. The more sun that you got, I think the better chance you have with tulips. Check your soil consistency. They do typically like a little bit of a well-drained soil. They don't want to sit in too much moisture. And if we have a heavy clay-based soil, then we definitely want to add some organic matter and perlite to help loosen up that soil and create a very well-drained soil because they don't want to sit in a lot of water. And then leave the foliage. That's going to be my advice for all bulbs. When I get to the end, I'll talk about this a little bit more. But leave that foliage. So when that bloom is done and you're ready to kind of do something else, and you're going to clean up that bed, leave the foliage. Even if it's starting to look a little off color, feed it. After it's done blooming, use bulb tone. You might even use something stronger, like I love our McDonald green leaf is what I feed all my daffodils and tulips with in the spring. After they're done blooming, give them this. It gives them a high dose of nitrogen. It helps keep those leaves green and also helps keep them just kind of growing and getting stronger and stronger. So green leaf is a great option too, but bulb tone is a great choice as well. Got all the nutrients that are specifically designed for bulbs, but a really, really good one. So we want to feed when we plant them, but we also want to feed in the spring. When they're done blooming. That helps keep that foliage going, and what that foliage is doing is producing more bulbs, producing side shoots, but also storing energy and going through the photosynthesis process and putting all of that food source back into that bulb so that when it goes dormant, it's got all its food right there, and then it'll come back year after year for you. So those tips hopefully help you with tulips. Now, if you got critters, there's a couple different options there. Let's see, did I grab them? You've got your animal repellents that you can just spray right over the top. Kind of keeps the deer and the rabbits and the squirrels from digging in that area. So animal repellent's a good one. If you've got voles, then you can use Repellex. So Repellex is a good option for moles or voles. But if you got voles, you got moles. We went through that whole process. If you want to learn all about moles and voles, I did a long webinar about it. It's a very, very good one. You should check that out. But if you've got vole issues and they're devouring your tulip bulbs, then you can use Repellex to get them out. It's a repellent. They don't like digging in it. They'll get out of your area, and you can plant your tulips safely. You might have to apply it about every 2 to 3 months, but that's much better than a spray. The spray you're going to have to put down about every time it rains, basically. 30 days or the next rain, you're going to have to reapply. But that's a good option for you as well. And then the last one is, let's see if I can get this bag up here. So Soil Perfector. So Soil Perfector made by Espoma. It's an all-natural soil conditioner. Let's see if I can get it up so you can see. It doesn't quite show you a picture, but right there in that little shovel, basically what it is a gray rock. It's a slate or a shale that's basically been heated up, and it pops like a little piece of popcorn, and it creates all these little sharp edges. Voles don't like to dig through it. Squirrels aren't going to like to dig through it. Nothing's going to like to dig through it, and it's a great soil amendment. So not only is it good for preventing the critters from eating your plants and your bulbs, your tulip bulbs, but it also is a great soil amendment. So you would put this in place of perlite. Another great option if you're dealing specifically with voles is daffodils. The next one that we're going to talk about. Nothing likes daffodils. Nothing likes to eat daffodils. Deer, rabbits, and squirrels alike aren't going to mess with daffodils. So you can use daffodils to surround your tulips. You know, I love doing that. Plant some tulips in the center and then surround it with daffodils, and then you've got your protection from your voles. Now, it's not going to protect from the squirrels that are going to walk on the top surface and dig down and eat up your tulips. But if you're trying to protect from voles, if you've got vole issues, that's another option too. Just add some tulip bulbs and surround your tulips with that, with the daffodil bulbs. All right, so those are kind of some solutions there for tulips and kind of the solutions for all, but we'll talk about that again at the end. All right, so now daffodils, my favorite. Daffodils are kind of the sign of spring. So let's see, we'll go through some of the basics. Let's see if I can find, well, let's start with this. So Probably the most common daffodil that you're going to see out there is just the common yellow daffodil. Dutch Master is what they typically call it. So this is a Dutch Master package. There's 50 in here, again, for $29.99. What a deal. Again, you get 50 plants, super, super reliable. Nothing messes with a daffodil. Very, very easy to grow. So you're going to plant these about 6 inches deep. And they get anywhere from 12 to 18 inches tall, so not very big. I think a lot of us know what daffodils look like. You kind of get that grassy blade of growth that comes out, and then all those blooms start to shoot up. Great little cut flower. Great fragrance. A lot of them have a very, very good fragrance to them. So daffodils are super, super easy to grow. And this is a landscape or a bulk bag. Great deal. And this is that Dutch Master, that pure yellow. So let's go, and I'll show you a couple other of my favorite daffodils. There's not a whole lot to tell you about daffodils other than they're so easy. And so again, if this is your first time ever doing bulbs, plant some daffodils. Super, super easy, very rewarding. So I love just the pure white. This one's called Mount Hood. So you get a little bit of that yellow from the stamen, from the throat, but really it's just a pure yellow. Again, full sun to partial shade for all of your daffodils. I've seen these growing in almost complete shade because when those trees drop their leaves, now maybe not on the north side of a house where you're not going to get much sun at all. You probably won't do super, super well with daffodils, but in a woodland setting or somewhere where a tree might be casting a shadow over it, most trees, maybe not pine trees you'd be fine with because again it's a higher canopy, but if you've got a big oak or maple, they're going to lose their leaves in the winter, and then these are going to start to bloom and start to produce leaves before the trees produce any leaves and start to cast that shadow again. So it's going to allow more sunlight in through. So you're going to do well with these around trees, around other plants. Super, super easy. And again, they're going to multiply and grow, and you can always go back and dig them up and move them around. Very, very easy to do. Now, that brings me to a great point that I haven't mentioned yet, which is to move these around. When would you move these around? In the fall. That's when they're growing. So what I like to do is by the fall, you typically have cut the foliage off, again, with all of your fall bulbs that you're planting in the fall for spring blooms. All of that green growth, let it go until it completely molts off. Typically that's going to be around the summer time frame, early summer, maybe midsummer. Try and keep that foliage going as long as you can. Maybe a little water if it's been a drought period. A little bit of plant food obviously keeps it going. But the longer that foliage goes, the more storage, the more food it's producing for itself, and the more it's going to build that root system, which is the bulb. And then they're going to multiply. Then you can cut it off at the top when it's completely gone brown. That's the best solution. Try not to cut them earlier. It's typically going to affect the count of blooms that you're going to get and the multiplication of blooms or bulbs. So when you with it off, mark that area. Make sure you know that it's there. Sometimes I'll put like maybe a rock down, a flat rock, or maybe I'll put a clay pot with a plant in it on top of them, mulch it, some sort of way to know that that's where they are. One, you can't plant anything else there because they're dormant or bulbs, so you don't want to plant anything. You can do a ground cover over the top, but you don't want to do much else. And then you can go and dig those up in the fall and start to relocate them and transplant them in other areas. So after you've had these in the ground for a while, daffodils, tulips, and they've started to multiply and you've started to kind of get a bigger and bigger patch and you want to go move them, in the fall just go dig them up, move them around, plant them, good to go, ready to roll again. Now you can do it in the spring. So as I mentioned in containers, a lot of us, I love doing them in containers. I'm going to talk about that some on Friday. But when you plant these in containers, you're going to get, you're going to kind of be done with them before you really should plant them. But it's okay. They're daffodils, they're tulips. They're going to be pretty tough. They're going to be pretty durable. So you just basically are going to take them out, hold that green foliage on the top and the bulb and protect it, and then go plant it back in the same similar situation, 6 inches deep. The foliage is going to be there still. So when it's done blooming in a container, you can still go and transplant them in the springtime. Not a bad time to do it either because you see the foliage, you see how it's doing. So I kind of always like that about transplanting. Knowing how the plant is doing helps. But bulbs are very easy and very reliable. So daffodils, great one. This is called Mount Hood. This one blooms in mid-spring with that pure white bloom. So let's get into some different ones. Tête-à-tête. Now this is an old favorite. And the reason I say old favorite is because it's been around for a while and it is super, super reliable. It's a little yellow bloom, so it's a smaller bloom. It blooms in early spring, kind of one of those first ones to come out of the ground, which is why I love it so much. Pure yellow, small blooms, but lots of blooms per plant. So you're going to get multiple blooms. And that's what's cool about daffodils compared to tulips, where you're going to get one bloom per plant. Daffodil, you get multiple blooms. I mean, you can get up to 10 blooms on one single bulb as these get older. Awesome, awesome plant, tete-a-tete with that smaller bloom, pure yellow, very, very easy to grow. 24 blooms in this package, or 24 bulbs in this package. Awesome deal. Let's see, let's go with, this is kind of one of my favorite ones. This one's called pheasant's eye, because I never see these out in the landscape much anymore. Let's see if I can let you see that. Look at that little throat right there, that cup in the middle. So the little cup has this kind of red edge with a yellow kind of blend behind it. So it's a pure white with this kind of eye look to it. So really, really neat one. Again, very easy to grow. Same thing as all daffodils, but this is just kind of a different look. We've also got the yellow with the orange cup on the inside. So really kind of a cool one. This one's called Akita. Akita is another old-fashioned, very reliable daffodil. And a lot of daffodils, this is kind of a cool little side story. The owner of McDonald Garden Center, or the father of the owner now, the guy who taught me everything, Eddie Anderson, has grown a lot of these bulb species in his yard for years and years and years, maybe 30, 40 years now that he's had these growing in his yard, and that's how reliable they are. They come back every year. So, I mean, you can get a plant, 6 of them, plant them, and you can enjoy them year after year after year, and then you can move them around and change them, share them with friends, all that stuff. It's so much fun and so easy and very rewarding and very beneficial and economical too. So Akita is a great one. So he's the one that kind of taught me about how long-lasting some of these bulbs can be. Let's go with, this is a cool one, February Gold. I was born in February, so this is kind of one of my favorites. This one blooms in very early spring. That's why they call it February Gold. But again, that pure yellow little small bloom. This one's awesome. This one's called Talia. So little white bloom, kind of almost spidery looking. I don't know if you can quite see that, but see that cup, how it kind of almost hangs down a little bit. Really, really neat. Pure white bloom, a little bit of that lime green in there. I don't know if you can quite see that, but I absolutely love this one. It's called Talia. And this one blooms in mid-spring. So again, a little bit of that early to mid-spring. Not a lot of late spring blooming daffodils, but there are some. So doubles, there are double daffodils. So you got some that have that cup on the inside, and they've got a little bit more petals that kind of shoot out of there. This one's a mix where you get the yellow and the orange, and then also the white and the salmon. So you get a little bit of a mix there. Really, really kind of cool looking different daffodil bulb. And these typically are going to bloom in that mid to kind of almost late season, and very, very easy to grow. So let's see. This is another very, very popular one. This one's called All Sorts Mix. And the reason it's called All Sorts is because it has all different types on there. So you got some double yellows, you got the white with the orange, you got the white with the yellow, you got the pure yellow. So you got a lot of different choices there in one bag. This one's got 20 bulbs. Plant them all together, and again, you get that bouquet of daffodil blooms all in that mix. That's why I love mixes. Takes the guesswork out of it. Just plant them all in one little area, and you get this awesome, awesome bouquet of flowers. Let's see. Is there another one I'm missing here? I think I kind of got all the daffodils. Here we go. This will be the last one. Dutch Master and Ice Follies. Those are probably one of the 2 most common varieties. Dutch Master is going to be the pure yellow. Ice Follies is going to be the white with the yellow throat or the yellow cup. So daffodils are so easy. Let me look around and make sure I didn't miss anything. I think I got everything. So daffodils are just super easy. One of the best. Go out there and try them. The last thing I will mention that are not in store yet because it's a little early, we do have a couple of them that have come in. So when I mentioned the hyacinths and being prepared, we have paper whites that are prepared. This is a paper white bulb. Nice, good looking size paper white. Paper whites are a daffodil, basically. It's a small daffodil bloom. They're extremely fragrant, really, I mean, almost that gardenia-like fragrance to them. And these are prepared, which means they've been through the cooling process. They think it's spring, especially when you put them in your house. So when you put these in your house, you can plant these in a bowl. You can plant them in some soil. You can put them in a glass container. I love them in like a glass kind of candle, like vase. Glass vase you can do them in. You can put them even in a cup that's maybe just the right size to hold it up, and the roots can hang down into the cup, and the roots will grow, and then you'll get these cool blooms. I just love them in a clay pot. Plant 3 of them in a 6-inch clay pot. Plant them just like that, just in a little group like that. Cover them with a little bit of soil, maybe a little bit of moss or some mulch, and then let those blooms grow up. And then I like to take a little branch, maybe spray paint it white, stick it down in there, add a little red ribbon, and you've got yourself a great Christmas bloom. You wouldn't want to plant these yet. We have these already. We're keeping them cool, keeping them kind of thinking that it's still winter time frame. But we do have some out for sale now, but we carry these all the way. You can plant these like December 1st and get blooms around Christmas. Amaryllis are another choice that will be coming in soon. So amaryllis look like a big bulb. I mean, you're typically, I got some big ones coming. So they're big, giant bulbs. You get this really cool foliage that comes out of them, multiple spikes, and then you get multiple blooms on each spike. So amaryllis is one of those Christmas flowers. We'll get those in again, typically in about probably the early to mid-October timeframe. So really only about 2 or 3 weeks away from getting the amaryllis. We've got the paper whites now. We've got some hyacinths that are prepared. So you can start thinking about forcing these flowers inside. And that's all that prepared means, is it's been through the winter and you can plant these. Now, what do you do with these after they're done? Go plant them. Go plant them outside. Be completely fine. You can plant daffodils, tulips, alliums, all winter long. So if you get here and it's December and you want to plant your bulbs then, that's perfectly fine. Typically I would say don't plant them until October, all of the bulbs that we just mentioned. But this September is gorgeous. I mean, it's the end of September now, so we're pretty close to October anyways. But typically I would say October to November is the best time to plant bulbs because our Septembers are usually warm. Well, we've had a cool September, so it's an okay time to go ahead and plant them. So you can plant all of your outdoor bulbs now. The indoor plants are the prepared bulbs, your paper whites, your hyacinths, and your amaryllis will be in soon, and you can start thinking about those soon. Amaryllis take a little bit longer, so you typically might want to get those around the mid to end of November to get those in some soil, to get those started to grow, so you've got Christmas blooms. We have a calendar. We'll have that posted pretty soon that will show you all the different the planting dates so that you know when you can get blooms. Typically with amaryllis, it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, depending on the variety, but we've got big bulbs, which means they should break faster. Paper whites are much faster, 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks. So again, kind of depends on your situation and how you're growing them, but very, very cool thing to do to force some hyacinths, some paper whites, or some amaryllis indoors. So I think I've kind of gone through and covered everything. I don't think I have any other tips or tricks. I mean, we talked about with tulips, all the things you can do. Leave the foliage on there as long as you can. Don't cut them too prematurely. Give them a spring feed after they're done blooming. If you do it before they bloom, you can force the blooms out a little bit too fast. So let them bloom, let them do their natural thing. After they're done blooming, feed them to keep that green growth going for as long as you can. And you'll be super, super successful. Mulch helps, keep the weeds away, do all the typical things you can do. But I can't stress to you the importance of how economical this is. I mean, to come in and buy 50 plants for 30 bucks, you can't get a better deal. And sometimes bulbs are on sale too. So sometimes you're going to get an even better deal. So just super, super easy, super beneficial. Let's talk about the spring blooming bulbs real quick because I'll mention that as well. I think a lot of people, this is what really kind of impacts it. So dahlias are in the spring, gladiolus, cannas. We talked about all the different types, but I like to use dahlias as my example of how economical they are. So dahlias, you typically can get a dahlia bulb for $4.99 each typically, so $5 for a dahlia bulb. Dahlias bloom in the summer all the way till fall. I mean, you get a huge bloom time. And they're an annual, so that's unfortunate. You can dig them up in the fall, dry them out over the winter, and plant them again in the spring. Same with like caladiums. You can do that as well. But the way that I like to explain this is to get a dahlia in a pot growing, a 6-inch nice sized dahlia is going to be anywhere from $14.99 to $17.99, maybe $20 for a dahlia plant when you could get it for $4.99. So think about that, the economics behind it. I mean, you would just save so much money, and I just love the fact that you can buy perennials, which are valuable. So you can buy, again, let's go with the daffodils or the tulips. You can get 50 of them for 30 bucks. And you've got a gorgeous landscape that's going to multiply year after year after year, give you tons of bloom, give you tons of cut flowers, lots of enjoyment, easy to do, and very, very affordable. So come into McDonald Garden Center, check out our bulb supply. We've got a brand new shipment just came in, so come in and check those out. If you've got any questions, I'll answer them now. I hope you enjoyed this seminar. I know I kind of went on and on in there for a little bit, but it's a very simple thing, and I was kind of trying to think about how do I fill the space here, but I can always talk. So don't worry about that. I hope you all enjoy this. If you're going to stick around for the questions, I'm going to answer all your questions now if you had any. But if you're not, if you're taking off, have a great day. Hopefully I'll see you Friday when I do my webinar on a fall container where I'll include some of these bulbs in there. And you can see how I can plant these underneath other things. So I'll talk about that on Friday. If not, have a great weekend. Have a great rest of your week. Fall is here. It's gorgeous out there. Hope to see you guys soon. All right, so now I'm going to get to your questions. All right, let's see. Hopefully nothing went away here. All right, so Dorian said, my pepper plant leaves look like they are dying, very fragile. I think I watered too much. I stopped watering, but is it too late? Have a lot of flowers, but going very slow. So pepper plants, unfortunately, are gonna meet their demise here pretty soon. They're gonna still bloom. They'll probably even produce some fruit. So if they look okay, it doesn't sound like they look super healthy, then you might go ahead and just scrap it and get to some spinach or lettuce in that area. Great fall crop that you can grow right now. But peppers are gonna definitely go when we get a frost for sure, and they're not gonna produce as quickly right now as they will in the summer. They love it hot, they love the heat. Now the plant probably has good size on it. I would say definitely don't water it very much right now with this fall weather, with these cool temperatures. You don't need to water it much at all. But once those temperatures get below 50 at night, they're not gonna do much at all. So I would say probably scrap them and get to your fall veggies, which are awesome. So Cheryl said, will any bulbs thrive in deep shade? So deep shade, I kind of mentioned it a couple times. Muscari is a great one for shade. I see these do very well in shade. That snowflakes or snowbells does very well in deep shade. And this is almost a partial to full shade recommended plant. So those do very well. But try some daffodils. They're super tough. And by deep shade, I'm assuming you mean probably under trees, Cheryl. And if you got trees, when those trees shed their leaves, it's going to be getting more light in there. And then when those daffodils or tulips, I would probably stick with daffodils if it were me, and maybe some of these snowflakes and some of the other ones. Then as those leaves kind of, before they emerge, it's going to be getting good light, and that's when these daffodils are going to come out of the ground, or these snowflakes, and so they'll be getting light. So yes, there are some. Now in the spring, you might try elephant ears. They like shade. You could also do peonies, do pretty well in a little bit of shade. Some of the lilies, and the, what was the other one? Oh, caladiums are awesome in the shade. Now there are a lot of those are foliage plants, but they're great bulbs to try for shady areas as well. I bought some bulbs at your store 2 years ago and just found them. If I plant them, will they grow? Well, good question. Depends on how they feel. Typically, they need to go on the ground within probably about, they don't want to be above ground. They don't want to be dried out for probably anywhere between 5 to 6 months. So you've had them for 2 years now, probably not very good. The way to tell is just by giving a little squeeze. If it is nice and firm like this one is, I can't even pop it, then it's good to go. If it's dry and it's dusty and when you squeeze it, it kind of disintegrates, it's probably no good. But if it's got some firmness to it, go out there and plant them. See what happens. Might as well. So Beth suggested the garden tone for your peppers to bring them back to life. That will definitely help. A little bit of plant food won't be bad, but don't water them as much right now because moisture or evaporation isn't occurring as fast because we don't have the temperatures that we typically do. Barbara from Maine, hope you're doing well up there. So Barbara said compost, that's what I need, and perlite and bulb food. Gotcha. Yep, Barbara, those are the best ingredients that you can. Louise said, thanks for the up, down, all around. I love that trick. It was the only thing that could make me kind of remember a night. I mean, everybody always told me NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, up, down, all around. Very easy way to remember it. So Wendy said, is there a certain way to test soil to find out what you need for nutrients for your garden soil? So Wendy, yes, there is. I don't do it here. I do have a test kit that will tell you your nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and your pH. So you get 4 little test tubes that you can test all your soil. And I think you can do up to 10 tests on each with each kit. But if you go to your extension agent or if you go to a library, you can pick up a box that you can send off to Virginia Tech, which is your local extension agent here in Virginia, and they will do a test on it and give you a full analysis. Now, I will tell you, Wendy, it is a lot of detail, and so sometimes it's really designed for farmers or for people that are growing a large vegetable garden. So typically what I will tell people is to warn you and to say, there's a lot of information there. don't get too stuck in it. pH is important. All of these bulbs love low pH, so or a slightly acidic pH, which is our typical range. Anywhere from 6.5 to 5.5 is our typical range. All of these bulbs do fine in that. So you don't need to worry about your pH specifically. If you're worried about your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium levels, then yes, you can check on that. But all of them are going to use those nutrients, and if it's lacking any of them, instead of what they're going to recommend is they're going to give you some recommendations, and it's going to be a long list of like put down 50 pounds of this per nitrogen per 1,000 square feet or something like that, and that's going to be it's going to be very daunting. So what I will tell you is just using bulb tone and using biotone or using our green leaf fertilizer is going to supply those nutrients that they need. The thing that I didn't mention about our green leaf is it's got all those micronutrients. So when you get your test results back, Wendy, it's going to have things like boron and copper and zinc and molybdenum and iron. That's all the things that we include in our green leaf fertilizer, which is why I love it so much. So Wendy, yes, you can get it tested. We don't do it here. We just do pH testing here. You can buy a test kit if you want to know just your basics, your nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. If you want to get a bigger one, check out Tech. Or get that box to send off a soil sample to the extension agent. So Amanda said, not sure if irises are considered a bulb or not, but I've got about 100 iris rhizomes in a paper bag on my covered porch that were dug up a couple weeks ago from someone else's yard, all ready to be planted, but I haven't gotten around to getting them. Let's see more. Planted in my yard yet. Have I ruined them by not planting them right away, or can I plant them in the next week or two and still have success next year? Amanda, for sure, I would say go for it. Again, kind of same thing. And yes, you're right. I group all of them into bulbs, but there are some that are rhizomes, tubers. There's a lot of different classifications or way of saying what they are. I kind of group them all in bulbs. So yes, irises are not typically bulbs. They're typically rhizomes. Because it's a Dutch iris, it has a very similar look to a bulb. But yes, as long as it's firm, it's got some strength to it, it's not squishy, it's not brittle, it's not dried up, I would say go ahead and plant them. Irises are super, super tough, very durable plants. You might even have some foliage on yours, and then you can go ahead and plant them. So, but yes, Amanda, I don't think you've ruined. I say go for it. Go ahead and get them in the ground. Irises will do fine. What do you do if your soil is more like clay? So, Ann, clay soil, add organic matter, which is compost, and then add perlite. Perlite's going to help break it apart. That's what you want to amend your soil with. So whether you're digging a trough, whether you're digging a hole, whether you're digging just a single hole, amend each one of those soils or your soil with a third compost, a third perlite. That's going to make your clay soil much better and much easier to grow in. All right, I dug up, so Wendy said, I dug up, so this is Wendy replying to Amanda, I dug up irises and kept them in an unheated garage until early spring before planting, and they did great. So yeah, irises are tough. Elisa said, can we do a raised bed garden training? We have done one. So Elisa, if you want to go to our webpage at mcdonaldgardencenter.com and check out our raised beds seminar, we did a webinar on raised beds. So definitely check that out. Got great information in there. So Elisa said, I want sweet onions. How long can you keep the bulbs? Do they come in smaller packs? So this is the smallest pack I carry in onions, are the 60 count ones. As far as sweet onions, the white ones I believe are sweet onions. So just your regular sweet onion. But yeah, they only come in 60 counts. That's the only size they come in. You can plant them pretty close. So spacing on onions is pretty much about 3 to 4 inches, I think, spacing. Very easy to grow. So if you run out of too many, use these onions to cook with. They're just basic small onions. Or plant them now, and then in the late fall, you can actually get a slightly bigger small onion that you can harvest if you want to. So my garlic grew and then died. So Elisa, you might want to check on your harvesting time frame for your garlic. If you plant them in the spring, you're going to get kind of a summer around here, typically a June, July, maybe even. But typically May and June is when you want to start watching your garlic to get the harvest. And like I said, with garlic, the most important thing to do is as a third of those leaves start to kind of look like they're struggling a little bit, starting to brown a little bit, that's when you want to harvest your garlic. So Ebony said, how do you avoid root rot? Peroxide possibly? I've never used peroxide. I don't know that I would recommend that. But to avoid root rot, you would want to make sure not to get them too moist. That's where root rot occurs, is when you've got way too much moisture in the soil and it can rot those bulbs. No bulb is going to like to sit in water all day long. Its roots love moisture, so that's why when I said when you can grow this in like a glass container where the roots will grow down into water, that's perfectly fine. But if this sits in too much water, if the bulb itself sits in too much water, then that can hurt it. So we always want to amend our soil, make it well drained. So if you got a really wet area, you wouldn't want to grow bulbs in that area. Wendy said, so Alicia said, you did veggies today. I thought this was about flowers. I missed it. Nope. So Alicia, I don't know if you caught, but I did do a lot on Flowers Talk. So again, if you're still watching, you can go back and watch this video. As soon as we're done, we'll get it posted. And then it'll be on our page as soon as we possibly can, our webpage as well, with the notes. So Wendy said, hyacinths seem to always get sparsely flowered bloom stems after a couple of years. Is there a way to get them keep making nice fat bloom stems? So Wendy, again, as bulbs age, they do start to kind of dwindle a little bit. And of course, adding a little bit of fertilizer. So Wendy, as I mentioned, as that foliage, when it's done blooming, adding a little bit of bulb tone or green leaf plant food to the foliage or around the plant, around that bulb, will help it kind of store resources, its food, into that bulb, and will help it bloom better the year after year. Now, as bulbs get older, again, they probably won't do as well typically, and the offshoots, the spawns of those bulbs will usually produce a little bit better. So as those bulbs multiply, you might go in and find the older, bigger bulbs and get rid of them and just use the younger bulbs. That might help as well. But I would try the plant food first, Wendy. So Ken said some very nice things. Thank you very much. So not a problem. Would these grow well in pots? So Cheryl, yes, lots and lots of bulbs grow well in pots. Wendy said, do squirrels eat ranunculus? I don't think so. Ranunculus, let's see if it says on here. It doesn't say that it's critter resistant, but as I kind of showed you that bulb, I don't know that it would eat that. Again, kind of that rhizome looking thing, that bulb. That is, I mean, that doesn't look super appetizing to me like a tulip would, so I don't think so, but I'll check and get back to you. But I'm pretty sure that nothing really messes with the ranunculus. When can you plant sunflowers, Kim? So sunflowers love it hot, and you want to plant those in the spring. You can do those from seed. We also carry them in plants. But sunflowers are very easy to do from seed. Come in and check us out in the spring. Typically around the April 15th time frame, our frost date is when you can get those in the ground, Kim, and get some summer blooms. They grow in lots of different sizes. You got some that are containers that only get about 12 to 18 inches tall, to some that get 10 feet tall. So lots and lots of different options there for sunflowers. So Ken said, how do you prevent squirrels from eating bulbs? So I mentioned that. So Ken, real quick, the soil perfector, that hard rock, basically that will prevent them from digging it up. A repellent is probably one of the best options to keep them out of there. Or if you've got a lot of squirrels and they're just a nuisance because they are pesky and they keep trying, don't plant tulips, plant daffodils. They won't eat daffodils. Wendy said, I planted 50 crocus bulbs Christmas week 1 year, and before spring the squirrels had eaten every one of them. So crocus are not squirrel resistant. So where was my crocus package? It doesn't say that crocus are pest or resistant. So again, if you have issues with lots of squirrels, either protect your bulbs or use bulbs that they won't eat. So thank you, Wendy, for that comment. That's a great comment. Didn't know that the squirrels would eat crocus. So Alicia said, I went to order garlic and onion bulbs. Can't because you can't order online. Yep, Alicia, we're working on that. We're going to get that working for you as soon as we possibly can. Hopefully in the next few months we'll have online ordering. But you can call the store if you want to come in. We're open 9 to 6 every day of the week. So you can stop by and pick up your bulbs anyway. So Carol said, spray the bulbs with hot pepper spray. The squirrels don't like it. That is true, and that is what this animal repellent is hot pepper spray. You can see a little hot pepper right there. So yes, hot pepper works as well. There's lots of different smell things that push the animals from messing with your bulbs. So Wendy said, does the pepper spray last all winter? No, it typically doesn't, but a lot of times what squirrels will do is they'll realize that the soil has been disrupted and they'll smell it because it's freshly planted, it hasn't been compacted down. And so usually that's when you're going to experience the majority of the problems is early. Keep an eye on them, but I do recommend spraying multiple times, usually after heavy rains, to get out there and spray again. So 30 days or heavy rain, spray again. So Kathy used red pepper flakes, so I'm glad that worked. I do carry, I didn't show this one, I do carry, because I wanted to check with the company, but I carry the systemic repellent, which is hot pepper, capsaicin, but I need to check with the company and see if it works on bulbs. It definitely works on plants. I was going to suggest it for when it comes up in the spring. This is a good option because it'll get stored in the foliage, but it's really more of a protector for deer and rabbits. And voles, it'll get stored in the root system. I'm just not sure if it gets stored in the bulb itself. So I'll have to check on that, but this would be a great one because then it is a one and done. You can apply that and then you're done. So yeah, so Wendy said, I know many people who place the bulbs in some type of cage screen wire to protect them from being eaten by animals. That is true. I used to sell a wire mesh kind of basket that you could plant them in, but it was never kind of really that great. It didn't fit a lot of things. It was kind of deep. So I just kind of stopped carrying them. But you definitely can put some wire mesh in the ground if you want to. I like the soil perfector because it improves the soil and they don't like to dig in it. So Wendy said, when is considered early, mid, and late spring? How many weeks for each period generally? So Wendy, great question. I didn't think about mentioning that. So I typically say early spring is February, late February into March. Then mid-spring is going to be kind of late March, maybe even not even March. So early spring would be late February through March. Then mid-spring is going to be April, and then late spring is going to be May. Now again, depends on Mother Nature and what she throws at us. Temperature dictates all of that. But length of day also has a little bit to do with it well, but soil temperature is what spurs that bulb to come up and to bloom. And so early spring blooming bulbs like daffodils, a majority of daffodils and tulips come to life when that soil temperature gets above usually 50 degrees. So that's kind of when it kind of spurs it to life and makes it grow. So that's kind of how I would delineate the months. I would say March early, April mid, May late. We said I'm interested in daffodils. Well, I hope you kind of were able to see it all. All right, so Wendy said, dividing tulips helps get more blooms too if they've been in the ground for a lot of years. So yeah, Wendy, kind of to my point earlier, as bulbs kind of get compacted or get kind of crowded, going in and freeing them up a little bit is great. I do love planting them initially in packs and groups. I think it really does help. It adds impact. They kind of feed off of each other a little bit, kind of like having a little family system. So I think that's pretty important. If you plant single bulbs spaced out, expecting them to spread quickly, it doesn't typically happen as fast as that. And it kind of can look a little wimpy. So I like planting everything in kind of mass plantings. I think it really helps. So Deborah said, for squirrels and deer, I surround my tulips around with daffodils, alliums. So beautiful blue. So yep. So Deborah had the same suggestion I did, which is to put daffodils or the ones that don't typically get eaten, mix them in with hyacinths and daffodils and alliums. Mix those in with your tulips or put them around your tulips, and that kind of helps keep the critters out. Deborah has plant buddies where they divide and share bulbs. That's great. So Gloria said, can you plant paper whites in garden after forcing them indoors? So yes, so those paper whites that you plant inside, when they're done blooming, just take them outside and plant them in the ground. The foliage is going to probably burn off, obviously, with the colder temperatures, but then it's going to think it's going into a fall-winter period. You might even get blooms in the spring, maybe not, but eventually it'll kind of get back onto cycle. What you can do is take them out, dry them, store them, plant them in the spring if you want to, but I typically recommend just getting them in the ground. Why not? maybe even letting that foliage kind of sit on the porch, leave them in the pot, put them outside, then plant them in the spring when it's kind of all said and done. Very, very easy. Again, it's a daffodil, so they're pretty durable. So Renee said, I joined late, so my question is, what is the best way to plant a bulb? So Renee, I like planting them in groups of at least 3 typically. You can plant them in swales, you can plant them in a larger kind of hole. So really what you want to do is when you buy a bulb, look at the package. It'll tell you right back here on this little diagram, this one right here, how the planting depth. So daffodils typically are 6 inches, tulips are 6 inches. So what I'll usually do is dig kind of a bowl or a shape that I want them to grow in. I showed this diagram earlier, so maybe you didn't see this. It's not a diagram. It's my very poor attempt to draw something. But let's say this is a flower bed. I might plant all daffodils in this kind of shape, or tulips in this shape, or I might just dig holes like this. But they don't have to be very deep, 6 inches deep, and you just kind of dig out this kind of trough. You can plant them individually, but each individual one I would at least put 3 bulbs in there if you can. I think it really helps. I think it gives you more impact. So that's kind of really how you plant them. You check your depth on your planting chart. So let's say crocus, for example, are going to be 3 inches. So you plant those about 3 inches deep. Tulips and daffodils are going to be about 6 inches deep. So that's how far you dig down. Then you just plant your bulbs in there, cover it with soil, water it in really well. Super, super easy, very, very easy to do. Renee, if you want to, you can go back and watch the beginning of the seminar. We'll have it posted as soon as I'm done here. So you can always check back and watch it again. Ann said, is there a place where I can watch your earlier videos? So yes, Ann, I don't know if you heard me earlier, but I'll mention it one more time. On our website, you can go to our website and scroll down a little bit. You'll see a webinar link. You click on that, it'll have all of our past videos. There's pages and pages of them now. And if they've been up there for long enough, that we'll have our notes on there. So we'll get this one up as soon as we can, and we'll post our notes as well with that. Brenda said, if I kept prepared bulbs from last winter but didn't replant them, will they grow inside again this winter? Well, Brenda, no, unfortunately it won't. You could try, again, check, make sure it's firm, make sure it feels hardy. It's not dry and brittle and being easily crushed. That's typically how I check my bulbs, or they're soggy or they're gross. But typically if you've had them dry, stored in a dry area, they're not gonna be soggy, but if they are easy to crush, they're hollow inside, that means they're done. But if they're nice and firm like this, then you can plant them. I would plant them outside. To get them prepared, they need to go through a long period of a cool time frame. So if you wanted to, some people will take their prepared ones and store them in the fridge, or maybe not in the freezer, but in the fridge. That keeps them extremely cool, and then you can plant them after about 2 or 3 months of being in the fridge. I wouldn't go through that process. I'd plant them, come in and get some prepared ones. A prepared paper white, I think, is 99 cents or something per bulb. So super, super easy. And then, of course, there's lots of other options to get them as well. But I wouldn't worry about trying to prepare them yourself. But if they've just been kept around since last winter, and they're still viable, I'd go ahead and plant them in the yard. You can coat bulbs. So Heidi said you can coat bulbs in medicated body powder before planting them to keep squirrels from eating. Interesting. Very, very interesting, Heidi. And Wendy said thank you. So, okay, I think I got through all the questions. Well, great to see everybody, or to hear from everybody. Someday we'll see everybody again. But thanks for checking in. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, everybody, for saying thanks. We appreciate you all watching. Hope you enjoyed this. We've got lots of bulbs. So get out there, plant some bulbs, dig, drop, done. It can be as simple as that. Add a couple steps, amend your soil, throw down some plant food, water them in really well, forget it until the spring, and you'll be amazed at the show you'll get. So hopefully you'll enjoy that, and then come in in the spring. And we'll do another one next spring probably on all the spring blooming bulbs, and rhizomes and tubers and all the different things. So check us out here at McDonald Garden Center. We'll be here with any kind of questions that you got. We're here to help. Have a great day, everybody. Hope to see you Friday for my fall container workshop class. So excited about that. Have a great day, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye.